Good evening, dear learner, and welcome back. If soulful stories that also grow your English speak to you, remember to subscribe. This is Learn English Through Story. Watch until the end to feel the first turn of Adrian's quiet war. A door refused to open in Adrian's life. But it wasn't a door to his apartment. It was the invisible door between the man he was and the man he promised to become. At 5:59 a.m., his alarm hummed like a distant mosquito. At 6 o'clock, his thumb found the screen, and the days slipped away like water through fingers. On his nightstand, under a ring from last night's coffee, lay a letter with a sharp voice. Final warning, it said without shouting. From the outside, Adrian looked composed. A crisp shirt, a glass office, laughter on weekends. But inside, order had broken rank. Socks hid beneath the couch like shy animals. A stack of dishes tilted with the courage of drunks. A half-written report crouched in his laptop, like a wounded thing afraid to move. He told himself a familiar bedtime story. Tomorrow he would change. Tomorrow he would sleep early, wake early, start strong. Tomorrow was the sweetest lie he knew. That evening the city wore rain like a thin coat. Elevator mirrors multiplied his tired face into a hall of strangers. At home, he dropped his keys and stared at the letter. His manager, Mr. Cole, hadn't been cruel, only accurate. Deadlines missed, meetings skipped. This is your final warning. The word sat like cold stones in his chest. He went to the bathroom and faced a mirror. Fluorescent light pressed shadows into his eyes. He searched for the exact moment he had drifted off course. There was no single crash, only the soft erosion of small choices. 5 more minutes, one more video. A late night bought on credit that morning would have to pay. He remembered his father's gravelly advice, spoken on a windy field years ago. If you don't command yourself, the world will command you. Back then the sentence sounded like an iron gate. Tonight it sounded like a map. His phone trembled with messages. Friends promised easy laughter. A delivery app begged to bring comfort to his door. Social feeds glittered like a carnival, where no one ever cleaned up. He swallowed and opened the laptop instead. The report blinked, a cursor waiting like a patient heartbeat. He typed the title, then a first line. The mind rebelled. Check your notifications. It hissed. Reward first, work later. He exhaled and kept typing, summoning one careful paragraph, then another like bricks set in rain. At 10:14 p.m., the apartment felt different, as if the air itself had taken a step back to make room for effort. He wasn't winning. Not yet. He was merely refusing to lose. On the wall clock, seconds ticked like a distant drum. He stood, stretched, and noticed the sink. Plates leaned against each other in a tire huddle. He washed one, then another. Hot water steamed his hands awake. Near midnight, he wrote a single sentence on a sticky note and pressed it to the mirror where his tired eyes would find it at dawn. No more tomorrows. The message was not a threat, but a promise, a rope thrown forward into morning. Then he placed his phone outside the bedroom, as if locking a fox out of the henhouse, and lay down in a quiet that felt like clean snow. Sleep rose to meet him. Somewhere between waking and dreaming, the stubborn door in his mind shivered. It did not open, but for the first time in months, the lock clicked. Learning focus. Gentle noticed the contrast between past simple, he typed. For clear actions and present simple and truths, tomorrow's the sweetest lie. To sound universal and memorable. Idioms like on credit, enjoy now, pay later, and refusing to lose, add emotion. The metaphor, locking a fox out of the henhouse, makes temptation vivid. Your turn, short practice in 2 sentences. Retell Adrian's choice before midnight. Then answer, what small action helped to protect the morning? The alarm blinked before the sun itself had found the courage to rise. Adrian opened his eyes, and for the first time in months, he did not silence the sound. He sat up, the gray city still half asleep beyond his window. His phone, glowing with notifications, tempted him like a sly dealer offering old poisons. His hand twitched toward it, but he stopped. No, he whispered. Not today. That refusal, so small, burned brighter than coffee. He stood, his body stiff, and walked into the kitchen. Dust crowned the counter. Dishes leaned like exhausted soldiers. It was not just a mess. It was a mirror of his life. He filled the sink with hot water, and as plates clinked beneath his hands, it felt like the first drumbeat of a war march. At the office, whispers followed him. Adrian on time? Adrian early? Even Mr. Cole raised an eyebrow. Adrian ignored them and opened the report he had delayed for weeks. The first sentences crawled out of him, heavy and reluctant. Laziness hissed, "Check your phone. You deserve a break. Tomorrow is safer." But he remembered Leah's voice at the cafe, disappointment trembling like a candle about to die. That memory held him steady. By noon, half the report lived on the screen. Not perfect, not beautiful, but alive. For the first time in months, pride returned to his chest, fragile yet real. That evening, temptation returned in sharper clothes. His friends messaged, "Drinks on us. Escape tonight." Laughter, neon, and noise waited just outside his door. His fingers typed yes, but froze. He saw tomorrow collapsing in ashes if he left. Slowly, he turned the phone face down. Instead, he opened his laptop. Hours dragged like chains across the floor. Every word felt wrestled, not written. Yet by midnight, the report was complete. He leaned back, exhausted but strangely alive. Stronger even than his excuses. In the dark, before sleep, Adrian whispered a new vow. One day at a time. I can win. Seedling learning focus. Notice the contrast in language. Not perfect, not beautiful, but alive. Contrast makes progress feel powerful, even in small steps. The idiom "drag like chains" shows how time feels heavy when fighting laziness. Another phrase, the first drumbeat of a war march, paints a simple dishwashing as the start of battle. Memo practice for you. Retell Adrian's morning in 2 or 3 sentences, using past simple: he woke, he washed, he worked. Then answer, why did he say no to his friends? For 3 days, Adrian lived like a new man. He woke before the alarm, washed dishes until the sink shone, finished tasks at work, even ironed shirts that had once slept in piles. Leah noticed a shift when they met for dinner. You seem different, she said, cautious but hopeful. I'm trying, Adrian replied, holding her hand. But discipline is like a newborn flame. It shines, yet trembles at the slightest wind. On the 4th night, the wind came. Emails had stormed across his desk all day. Meetings bled into one another, and deadlines pressed down like iron hands. He stumbled home exhausted. The couch, soft and waiting, whispered like an old lover. Just 10 minutes, Adrian. Just rest your eyes. 10 minutes became an hour. An hour became 3. Midnight slipped by, carrying with it the report due in the morning. The couch cradled him, not like comfort, but like an enemy in disguise. The next day, he woke late, shirt wrinkled, hair wild, eyes burning. At the office, Mr. Cole's disappointed glance stabbed sharper than words. Leah didn't answer his texts. Shame crawled across his skin. The voices returned, cruel and certain. See? You can't change. You'll always be the same. Why fight it? For a moment, he believed them. He saw his future collapsing, job loss, Leah gone, himself sinking into excuses like quicksand. Panic stormed his chest. His hands shook under the desk. Then, through the storm, a memory rose. His father's voice, steady as a lighthouse beam. Control yourself before the world controls you. Adrian clenched his fists. He realized relapse was not the end. It was a test. The question was not whether he had fallen, but whether he would rise again. That evening, trembling, he sat back at his desk. His laptop glowed like a forge. Not tomorrow, he whispered, jaw set. Now. Line by line, word by word, he fought his way back into the work. Seedling learning focus. The metaphor discipline is like a newborn flame, shows fragility. The simile, the couch cradled him like an enemy in disguise, reveals how comfort can betray. Notice the rhythm of 10 minutes became an hour became 3. Repetition creates the sense of sliding deeper into failure. Memo practice for you. Write 2 sentences beginning with 10 minutes became to describe something in your own life. Then answer, what helped Adrian rise again after relapse? The relapse shook Adrian deeply, but it also gave him clarity. He finally understood that change could not come from bursts of willpower followed by collapse. He needed something steadier, a system stronger than mood or impulse. On Saturday, he visited his father in the quiet house outside the city. The old man listened without interruption as Adrian confessed everything: missed deadlines, Leah's disappointment, the endless tug-of-war with laziness. Silence lingered after his words, heavy as stone. Then his father spoke slowly. You think control means crushing yourself into obedience, but real control is rhythm. You cannot climb a mountain in one leap. You climb it step by step. Small wins, repeated daily, become unshakable power. The sentence struck Adrian like a hammer shaping iron. Small wins. That was the secret. He returned to the city with a new experiment. One rule: 5 minutes. No matter how tired, no matter how late, he would spend at least 5 minutes on his most important task. No excuses, no delays. The first night, his eyes were heavy, his body weak. He set a timer and whispered, just 5 minutes. Seconds dragged like wet sand, but when the timer rang, something strange happened. He didn't stop. 5 minutes became 20. 20 became an hour. By the time he closed his laptop, half the report was finished. The next morning, he woke lighter, as if a small stone had been lifted from his chest. The victory wasn't grand, but it was steady. Day after day, he repeated the ritual. Some nights he managed only the bare 5 minutes. Other nights the work stretched into hours. But the true victory was not in the length of time. It was in the rhythm. He was training his mind to obey, not his laziness. Leah noticed. You're different, she said again, but this time warmth replaced doubt. You keep showing up even when you're tired. At the office, Mr. Cole's sharp eyes softened. Good progress on this project, he remarked, offering Adrian a rare smile. For the first time in months, Adrian felt the ground beneath his feet grow solid again. His father's words echoed. Small wins, repeated daily, become unshakable power. And Adrian began to believe them. Sealing learning focus. The metaphor, a hammer shaping iron, shows how his father's words forged Adrian's resolve. The phrase, seconds drag like wet sand, captures the weight of effort at the start. The idiom, keep showing up, means to remain consistent, even when difficult. Memo practice for you. Write one sentence about your own life using small wins, for example. Small wins and exercise keep me strong. Then answer, what was Adrian's new rule and why did it help him? Weeks passed. Adrian's rhythm held, steady as a drumbeat. His reports grew sharper, his apartment cleaner, his eyes clearer. Leah smiled more often, though a trace of caution still lingered in her voice, as if she were waiting to see whether this change was permanent. But comfort is patient. It does not vanish. It waits. One Friday evening, rain washed the city in silver streaks. Adrian left the office tired but proud. His colleagues invited him out, laughter already spilling from their voices. He hesitated. He remembered the last time he had chosen escape over progress. Yet inside, a whisper grew louder. You've earned it. One night won't hurt. Don't you deserve to relax? At home, the temptation multiplied. The couch stretched its arms. His phone lit up like a carnival. The delivery app hummed with promises of hot meals and lazy satisfaction. He stood at the crossroads, shoulders heavy with indecision. He poured himself a glass of water and stared at the desk where his laptop waited. His heart thumped. He thought of Leah's cautious eyes, of Mr. Cole's measured trust, of his father's words echoing like bells. Step by step, small wins. But the other voice was seductive. Why fight tonight? You've done enough. Comfort is love. Comfort is safety. Adrian sat on the couch. The cushions welcomed him. For a moment, it felt harmless, even sweet. But as minutes slid into hours, unease grew in his chest. The couch no longer cradled him. It chained him. His phone's glow became a leash. His half-finished task stared from the desk, silent and accusing. Suddenly he saw it clearly. Comfort was not a friend. Comfort was a thief, stealing tomorrow in exchange for a few soft minutes today. He stood, breath sharp in his throat, and walked back to the desk. His hands trembled as he opened the laptop. but the act itself broke the spell. The first line he typed felt like cutting through ropes. The second line like stepping onto solid ground. By midnight, the storm outside had calmed, and so had he. The report wasn't finished, but progress had been made. More importantly, he had chosen battle over surrender. He whispered to the empty room, "Comfort is the sweetest poison. I will not drink it." Seedling learning focus. The metaphor "comfort was a thief" shows how ease steals future strength. The idiom "stood at the crossroads" means facing a difficult choice. Notice how repetition in the first line, the second line, builds a feeling of climbing back from weakness. Memo practice for you. Describe in 1 or 2 sentences a time you faced temptation. Use the phrase "stood at the crossroads" in your answer. Then reflect. What did Adrian finally realize about comfort? The battle with comfort had left Adrian shaken but wiser. He now understood that discipline was not a one-time victory. It was a war fought every day, in small, invisible moments. One morning, he stood before the mirror and studied his own eyes. They no longer looked like the eyes of a man drifting. They were tired, yes, but sharper, steadier. On the glass, his sticky note still waited. No more tomorrows. For the first time, he felt the truth of those words, not as a slogan, but as a command. At work, Mr. Cole summoned him. Adrian braced for criticism, but instead the older man leaned back in his chair and said, "I've noticed improvement. Reports delivered on time. Attendance sharper. Keep this up, Adrian. Talent without discipline is wasted, but discipline turns talent into power." The words settled into Adrian's chest like a stone dropped into water, sending ripples outward. For months he had feared Mr. Cole's disapproval. Now, approval tasted like hope. That evening Leah visited. She wandered through his apartment, surprised by the neatness, the fresh smell of soap, the absence of chaos. She turned to him, eyes bright. "I can see you're fighting. Not perfectly, not without stumbles, but honestly, and that means more to me than promises." Adrian's throat tightened. For so long, he had tried to win her trust with words. Now he understood trust was built with actions repeated over time, just like discipline itself. Still, the war was not over. Doubt remained, whispering in quiet hours. But Adrian no longer believed doubt's lies. He had felt the difference, small wins shaping large change. And one night, when exhaustion clawed him again, he repeated his father's words aloud. "You cannot climb a mountain in one leap. You climb it step by step." Something shifted inside him. He realized discipline was not about never falling. It was about always rising. From that day forward, Adrian began to design his life around systems rather than moods. He set alarms not just for waking, but for starting work, for cleaning, for exercise. He kept his phone in another room while working. He broke tasks into small, daily pieces instead of vague, overwhelming goals. Each system was a guardrail against his weaker self. Slowly, the enemy within lost ground. Seedling learning focus. The phrase "discipline turns talent into power" is a truth expressed in simple, strong language. The idiom "stone dropped into water" shows how Mr. Cole's words created lasting impact. Notice how repetition in "not perfectly," not without stumbles, but honestly makes Leah's words more powerful. Memo practice for you. Write 1 sentence about your own life using the phrase "step by step." Then answer, what did Adrian finally realize about discipline? The rhythm Adrian had built was strong, but life has a way of testing the strongest walls. It began with a sudden storm at work, a massive project, impossible deadlines, colleagues dropping responsibility onto his desk. Adrian pushed back at first, determined not to lose ground. But the hours stretched longer, nights shorter, and his system began to crack. By the 3rd week, his body ached with exhaustion. He came home one night, rain dripping from his coat, and found Leah waiting. Her eyes were worried. "You're burning yourself out," she said softly. "I see the old shadows in you. Don't lose what you've built." Adrian tried to smile, but the truth pressed against his chest. The reports, the endless meetings, the pressure to perform. It all felt like a tide pulling him back into the sea he had just escaped. That night, he lay awake. His phone glowed nearby, full of easy distractions, sweet escape. He reached for it, then froze. He saw the choice clearly. Surrender to the old Adrian, or endure the pain and rise higher. He whispered to himself, discipline is not comfort. Discipline is a sacrifice. The next day at the office, the storm reached its peak. A critical mistake in the project threatened to undo weeks of work. Colleagues panicked. Mr. Cole demanded answers. All eyes turned to Adrian. The old Adrian would have hidden, blamed, excused. But this Adrian inhaled, clenched his jaw, and said, I'll take responsibility. I'll fix it. He stayed at his desk while the office emptied. Hours bled into night. Laziness hissed, sleep. Quit. This is too much. But Adrian typed, calculated, corrected. His shoulders screamed with pain, his eyes burned, yet he refused to stop. At dawn, the mistake was repaired. The project saved. When Mr. Cole arrived that morning, he found Adrian still at his desk, pale and weary, but victorious. For the first time, the manager placed a hand on his shoulder and said only 2 words, well done. Adrian stumbled home later that day, collapsing into bed. As sleep swallowed him, one truth rang louder than any exhaustion. He had faced a storm and not drowned. The enemy within was not dead, but Adrian had learned something vital. Discipline was not about ease or perfection. Discipline was about choosing the hard road when every part of you screams for the easy one. Seedling learning focus. The phrase, life has a way of testing the strongest walls, is a metaphor for challenges arriving when we feel stable. The idiom, all eyes turn to Adrian, shows the pressure of responsibility. The sentence, discipline is not comfort, discipline is sacrifice, is short and striking, giving it power. Memo practice for you. Write one sentence about a time you chose a hard road instead of the easy one. Then answer, how did Adrian prove to himself that he was changing? Weeks after the crisis, Adrian's life felt different, not because the battles had ended, but because he finally understood them. Laziness still whispered. Comfort still tempted. Excuses still tried to creep in like shadows. But Adrian no longer mistook them for friends. He recognized them as enemies wearing familiar masks. Leah noticed, too, one evening, as they walked to the park, autumn leaves swirling around their steps. She slipped her hand into his. You're not perfect, she said gently, but I can see you're fighting. And that's all I ever wanted, to know you won't give up on yourself. Adrian smiled, the kind of smile born not from easy joy, but from hard-won strength. He thought of his father's words, of Mr. Cole's stern warnings, of nights when the couch nearly swallowed him whole. He thought of the sticky note on his mirror, no more tomorrows. Discipline, he realized, was not about winning once. It was about fighting daily. It was not a finish line, but a lifelong road. Some days he would stumble. Some days he would fall. But as long as he stood again, he would not be defeated. At the office, colleagues began to treat him differently, not as the unreliable dreamer, but as someone they could trust. Mr. Cole handed him a new project, larger than before. Adrian accepted with steady hands. He no longer feared the weight of responsibility. He had learned that strength was not the absence of weakness, but the refusal to bow to it. That night, as he stood before the mirror once more, he whispered, I am my own enemy, but I am also my own weapon. The reflection staring back was tired, human, imperfect, but no longer broken. For the first time, Adrian felt not just alive, but awake. And in the quiet of that moment, he understood the truth that would guide him for the rest of his life. The greatest victory is not over the world outside, but over the enemy within. Seedling learning focus. The contrast in enemy versus weapon shows transformation. The metaphor excuses, like shadows, reveals how they never disappear completely, but lose their power when recognized. The phrase hard-won strength captures progress achieved through struggle, not luck. Memo practice for you. Retell Adrian's final realization in your own words. Then reflect. Do you agree that self-discipline is the greatest battle in life? Why or why not? Glowing Star, thank you for staying until the end of Adrian's journey. If you found his fight meaningful, Remember to subscribe, like, and share your thoughts. One question for you to answer in the comments. What is your enemy within, and how do you fight it? Prologue. In every city street, in every quiet bedroom, there is a hidden war. It is not fought with swords or guns, nor written in history books. It is silent, invisible, yet heavier than any battlefield. It is the war inside a single human heart. Adrian was 25, bright, talented, full of dreams. From the outside, his life looked ordinary. An office job, friends who laughed too loudly, a girlfriend who still believed in him, a father who spoke in wise but simple truths. Yet beneath that surface, Adrian lived in chains. The chains were not made of iron. They were woven from laziness, from excuses, from the sweet poison of comfort. Every morning his alarm rang, and every morning he silenced it. Every evening he promised change, and every evening tomorrow carried the burden. His life was not destroyed in one great disaster. It was being stolen slowly, quietly, by minutes wasted, by promises broken to himself. But the world has little patience for men who betray their own potential. Adrian's boss had given him a final warning. His girlfriend, Leah, had grown tired of waiting for change. And Adrian himself, when he looked in the mirror, no longer recognized a man staring back. This is the story of how Adrian discovered that the hardest enemy is not the one outside, but the one within. A story of relapse and resistance, of failure and renewal. A story of how one young man learned that discipline is not perfection, but the daily choice arises when every part of him wished to fall. It begins not with triumph, but with a single whisper in the dark, no more tomorrows.